The sun beat down like a hammer, scorching the endless dunes. Captain Elias Kane staggered forward, each step a battle against the sand that slipped beneath his boots. His throat burned, dry and raw, and the little water left in his canteen was gone. His vision blurred. Heat waves danced across the horizon, and every inhale of hot, dry air felt like swallowing fire. He had been walking for hours, no, days, through this desert of endless orange and gold, and he felt his strength fading. He had landed on this planet for exploration, for discovery, but the desert had not been kind. Supplies had been miscalculated, storms had destroyed what remained, and now, alone and desperate, he felt the cold shadow of death creeping closer. He sank to his knees, breathing shallowly, trying to remember if he had even eaten in the past day. He could not recall. Only the thirst remained, sharp and unbearable. Then, just as his knees buckled and he thought he might collapse, he saw it, a green shimmer on the horizon. At first he thought it was a mirage, a cruel trick of the sun, but as he blinked against the glare, he realized it was real. A small cluster of trees rose from the sand, their leaves thick and bright, shimmering with water. Surrounding them were structures that looked carved from the stone itself, towers and walls rising like guardians of this hidden oasis. Elias forced himself to stand, every step an agony, and staggered toward it. He wanted nothing more than to sink to the ground and drink deeply. But as he drew closer, movement caught his eye. Shadows shifted between the towers, figures tall and imposing. These were not ordinary people, not humans. They moved with precision, their bodies strong, their stances deliberate. Alien warriors. His heart skipped, caught between relief and fear. Before he could take another step, a sharp voice sliced through the air. "Water's earned," it hissed, cold and commanding. "Serve or we feast." Elias froze. From behind a stone column, a figure emerged. She was tall, her movements lithe and deadly. Her eyes glinted with intelligence and danger. Armor covered her body, crafted in shapes that seemed alien yet functional. She held a long spear, its tip shimmering in the sunlight. Elias raised his hand slowly, careful not to appear threatening. I am alone. I need water," he said, voice hoarse, his lips cracked and bleeding. The alien woman tilted her head, studying him. "Water is not given to strangers. Strength is tested. Loyalty is proven. Only then do you drink." She gestured sharply, and two other warriors appeared, their eyes cold and assessing. Elias realized he had walked into their world, and in their world, survival came at a price. Weak as he was, he nodded. He had no choice. "I will do what you ask," he rasped. Ceres, as he would later learn her name, did not lower her spear. "Then begin." His first tasks were simple but brutal. He was ordered to carry heavy supplies from the outer cliffs to the oasis under the scorching sun. Every step was agony. Sand scalded his feet even through his boots. The warriors watched silently, their gaze unwavering, as if testing whether he would break. Several times he stumbled, nearly collapsing, but he pushed on, motivated by nothing but the need for water. A few drops were given to him after each successful task, but it was never enough. Elias began to notice the rules of this place. The warriors moved with a rhythm, every action purposeful. Even their play, their training, was a lesson in survival. They hunted not just for food, but for strategy, for discipline. Ceres taught with sharp words and sharper eyes. Every mistake was noted, every weakness catalogued. He joined them on hunts. At first he was clumsy, nearly killed by both the terrain and the creatures that roamed the desert beyond the oasis. The warriors, however, did not kill him for failure. They tested him, and he learned from each encounter. Slowly, he began to move like them, sensing the patterns of the land, predicting the movements of prey. Each successful hunt earned him water, but more importantly, it earned him glances of cautious respect. Still, he could see the doubt in their eyes. Humans were unpredictable, and many of the warriors whispered among themselves. "He will fail," one muttered. "No human survives this long," said another. Elias could hear, but he did not falter. Every drop of water, every moment of survival became a fuel that pushed him forward. Nights at the oasis were colder than the desert day had been harsh. Elias lay among the warriors who slept with one eye open, weapons always near. At first, he had feared them even in sleep, but gradually he learned their rhythms. They trusted no one, yet they did not hate him. They watched. And in their watching he began to feel a strange sense of belonging, even if it was tenuous. One night, Saris approached him quietly. She sat beside him on the sand, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "You are stubborn," she said softly, almost a whisper. "Most humans die before the first moon rises." Elias nodded, too tired to speak, but grateful for her acknowledgement. Even a small sign of recognition felt like a triumph. Days blurred into each other. Elias learned to carry water carefully, rationing it, drinking only when necessary. He learned the language of the oasis, gestures and signals that conveyed more than words ever could. He learned to move with silence, to anticipate danger, to survive, and with each lesson he grew stronger, not just in body but in spirit. Yet the desert beyond still loomed as a threat. Saris warned him that survival here was not guaranteed. The oasis was a jewel, but others coveted it. Raiders and predators were drawn to its life-giving water, and every day the warriors practiced drills preparing for attacks. Elias was expected to join, to prove his value not just as a survivor but as a protector. He began to innovate, using his human knowledge in ways the warriors had not considered. He reinforced walls with techniques learned from ships he had repaired. He set traps for predators using clever mechanisms, and he helped design new strategies for hunting and defense. Slowly, the whispers among the warriors shifted. Some began to nod when he entered the room. Some even sought his advice. He felt a small pride, a warmth amidst the harsh sun and bitter thirst, but trust was still fragile. Saris never smiled, never lowered her guard completely. She tested him daily, pushing him to exhaustion, watching for signs of weakness or deceit. "Water is earned," she reminded him repeatedly, her voice a hiss in the dry air. "Serve, or we feast." The words haunted him, yet they drove him. They reminded him that survival here demanded more than strength. It demanded courage, determination, and wit. One afternoon, a challenge arose unlike any he had faced before. Saris led him and a group of warriors to the edge of the desert, where cliffs dropped into deep canyons. "Retrieve the water stones," she commanded. These stones were heavy, and the canyon was infested with creatures far more dangerous than anything Elias had encountered. Failure meant death. Success meant survival and a measure of respect. Elias hesitated, fear gnawing at him, but he could not show it. With a deep breath, he followed Saris. The climb was treacherous. The creatures attacked without warning. He stumbled, fell, scraped himself on jagged rocks, but he pressed on. Every movement had to be calculated, precise. Every decision carried weight. Hours passed, sweat and blood mingling, until finally he reached the stones. Returning was equally perilous. Creatures ambushed them, forcing Elias to fight with ingenuity rather than brute strength. He used traps, misdirection, and clever timing to survive. By the time he returned to the oasis, bruised and exhausted, Saris's eyes were on him. He expected criticism, perhaps even punishment for taking risks, but instead, she nodded. Just a small nod, but it carried immense meaning. He had survived, and he had proven his worth. That night, Elias drank deeply, savoring every drop. For the first time since entering the desert, he felt a flicker of hope. He realized that survival here was not about fear. It was about learning, adapting, and earning every gift. And as he looked around the oasis at the warriors who had become both teachers and judges, he understood that he was no longer just a desperate human. He was a part of something larger, something brutal and beautiful, a test of spirit and strength. He lay back under the stars, listening to the wind in the oasis trees, and for the first time he felt a strange calm. The desert was still out there, endless and merciless. But here, he had found a place where humans could survive, not by chance, but by courage. And he was determined to prove that humans were more than just fragile creatures of flesh. He would prove that they could endure, adapt, and rise, even among warriors who thought them weak. The night passed slowly. Elias slept lightly, dreams filled with sandstorms and spear points, with whispers of the desert and the hiss of Ceres's voice. When dawn broke, he rose, ready for the next trial. He knew it would be harder. He knew that the path ahead would demand everything he had. But he also knew that he had survived the first test, and in doing so, he had planted the seeds of something far greater than mere survival. And so Elias Kane, human among aliens, warrior among warriors, began the journey of earning not just water, but respect, trust, and a place in a world that demanded everything from those who entered it. The desert was unforgiving, the oasis alive with challenges, and Ceres's eyes always watching. But he was no longer just dying of thirst. He was learning to live and perhaps to thrive in a world where survival was earned with courage, wit, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. The sun rose over the oasis, painting the sand and stone spires in gold. Captain Elias Kane stood at the edge of the trees, his body stiff from training and previous trials, yet his mind sharp. The desert beyond seemed endless, but the oasis, alive. With movement and life was now his home, if only temporarily. He had learned much from the warriors, observed their discipline, and gained small glimpses of Ceres's acknowledgement. Still, he knew that earning respect was one thing, earning survival during true danger was another. The warning came suddenly, in the form of smoke curling over the dunes. Scouts returned quickly, breathless and wary. "Raiders," one said. "They know of the oasis." The word sent a shiver through Elias. Raiders here were not simple thieves. They were deadly, organized, and ruthless. Their desire for water made them merciless. The oasis would not survive an unprepared attack. Ceres gathered her warriors. Her armor glinted, her spear pointed toward the horizon, and her voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Prepare defenses. We will not yield. Humans, step forward. Show your worth." Elias stepped up, heart pounding. He knew that the lessons he had learned were about to be tested in the harshest way. The warriors moved with a rhythm Elias had come to recognize. They were precise, disciplined, and lethal. He followed their patterns, helping to fortify walls, dig traps in the sand, and position defensive points along the perimeter. Using knowledge from his human experience, he suggested small modifications, leveraging mechanical principles and angles that made the defenses even stronger. Ceres watched him, expression unreadable, yet something in her eyes hinted at curiosity, maybe even approval. Night fell, and the oasis grew tense. Fires burned along the towers, shadows stretching across the sand. The first scouts of the raider faction arrived quietly, hoping to catch the oasis off guard. Elias crouched with a small squad of warriors listening, waiting. When the raiders moved into range, he signaled. The warriors struck with precision, arrows and spears flying. Elias used his ingenuity, pushing boulders to create barriers and redirect attacks. The first wave was repelled, but he knew the main attack was coming. Hours passed in brutal struggle. The raiders were relentless, their numbers vast, but the oasis defenders fought with skill and coordination. Elias noticed the warriors moving, differently now around him. They trusted him, followed his suggestions without question. A small nod from Ceres confirmed what he had feared and hoped. Humans, when trained and brave, could be as cunning and deadly as the fiercest warriors. When the raiders regrouped for the main assault, Elias prepared a trap of his own design. He led a small squad into a narrow canyon near the oasis, using sand and rocks to create a deadly funnel. The raiders, confident and aggressive, fell into it. Boulders tumbled down, sand traps ensnared them, and the remaining warriors struck with precision. The battle raged, chaotic and violent, but through strategy, coordination, and sheer courage, the oasis began to turn the tide. Amid the chaos, Ceres appeared beside him. "You move like a warrior," she said, her voice sharp, yet carrying a note of respect. Few humans survive this long under real threat. Elias, exhausted, nodded but did not speak. Actions mattered more than words now. Together they led charges, redirected attacks, and inspired the warriors around them to fight harder. Finally, after what seemed like hours, the raiders retreated. The oasis was battered, sand and debris littering the paths, but it had survived. Elias fell to his knees, breathing heavily, heart racing from both fear and triumph. Around him, the warriors gathered, their gazes no longer cold, but measured with respect. Ceres approached, her armor scratched, yet her posture commanding as ever. "You have done well," she said almost softly. Elias looked up at her, unable to hide his relief and exhaustion. I only did what I had to," he managed. "You did more than survive," she replied. "You led, you protected, and you proved humans can be worthy allies." For the first time, she did not hiss or threaten him. Her recognition was quiet, but it was real. The next days were spent repairing the oasis, treating the wounded, and reinforcing the defenses. Elias worked alongside the warriors, teaching some human strategies, learning more of their techniques, and continuing to prove his worth. He found himself becoming a bridge between cultures, an unlikely leader who combined human ingenuity with alien discipline. Even the youngest warriors looked to him for guidance, and even then he did not falter. Yet even amidst success, challenges remained. Ceres, true to her nature, tested him constantly. She arranged training sessions that pushed him to exhaustion, duels that demanded quick thinking, and strategic games that measured his intellect and patience. Elias began to see that trust and respect were not freely given in this world. They were earned through courage, cleverness, and consistency. During one training session, she challenged him to a duel. Unlike previous tests, this was not physical alone. It measured strategy, adaptability, and instinct. And Elias moved carefully, anticipating her strikes, adapting to her patterns, and using the environment to his advantage. He blocked, dodged, and countered, blending what he had learned from the warriors with his human unpredictability. Sweat and dust coated his body. His muscles screamed in protest, yet he did not yield. Finally, with a precise move, he disarmed her, not to humiliate but to show mastery. Ceres's eyes widened slightly, almost a flicker of admiration. "You have learned quickly," she said, her voice low and steady. "Humans are cleverer than we believed." Elias bowed slightly, exhausted but proud. The acknowledgement from her felt heavier than any reward he had received. He had proven he was more than a survivor. He was a warrior in their world. Days turned into weeks, and the oasis stabilized. Trade and exploration beyond the walls became possible, with Elias accompanying scouting teams. Together, they mapped the desert, identified threats, and expanded the oasis's influence. Human ingenuity and alien strength combined, making the oasis stronger than ever. The warriors began to speak of him not as an outsider, but as part of their tribe, though Ceres remained the ultimate authority. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the desert, Elias and Ceres stood side by side, overlooking the oasis. The fires burned softly below, and the warriors moved with purpose and pride. "You have changed the oasis," she said. "Your presence has proven something important. Humans are not weak. They endure, adapt, and they fight with cunning." Elias looked at her, understanding the weight of her words. He had started as a desperate, dying man, and now he was part of a living, breathing community that respected his skill and courage. The night air was cool, and for a moment, both of them were silent, sharing the calm after storm and battle. Elias realized that survival was not the end goal. It was the beginning of understanding, of learning, and of proving worth. In this alien world, humans could rise, could thrive, could stand shoulder to shoulder with the strongest beings he had ever known. Ceres finally spoke again, her voice steady. "You have earned more than water. You have earned respect. Do not forget it." Elias nodded, understanding that this respect was not permanent. It had to be maintained, nurtured through action and courage, but it was real. And for a human, in a world that had seen many die for far less, it was more than he had ever hoped for. As he walked back to the center of the oasis, the warriors nodding at him, the fires casting long shadows, Elias Kane felt a quiet pride. He had survived the desert, faced death, earned the trust of fierce warriors, and proven that humanity had strength beyond flesh and endurance beyond expectation. He realized that humans could not only survive, they could lead, inspire, and thrive even in worlds that seemed utterly alien. And so, the Oasis remained alive, a testament to courage, strategy, and the unyielding spirit of humans. Elias had not just found water, he had found a place among warriors, a new understanding of strength, and the knowledge that even the harshest worlds could bend before ingenuity, courage, and determination. The desert still stretched endlessly beyond the oasis, but Elias Kane was no longer alone, no longer desperate. He was a part of something greater. He was human, he was strong, and he had earned a place in a world that demanded nothing less than courage. And in that truth he finally felt alive.